Hello, sleepy soul. The night is quiet, the world is asleep, and something is waiting in the dark. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and write your country and current time in the comments. Now listen carefully. I was 17 when my mom moved us to Palmer Street, and at the time, I thought the worst thing about that place would be starting over. New town, new school, new bedroom with ugly yellow walls, new neighbors who stared from behind curtains like moving trucks were some kind of public event. We had come from a cramped apartment 2 towns over, the kind with loud pipes and people arguing through thin walls. So when my mom found a small rental house in a quiet suburb, she acted like we had won the lottery. There were maple trees along the sidewalks, little porch flags, wind chimes, garden gnomes, the whole thing. It looked safe. That was the word everyone kept using. Safe. Our next-door neighbor was an old man named Mr. Corman. He lived alone in a narrow white house with a brick chimney and dead flower beds. The first thing I noticed about his place wasn't the peeling paint or the weeds. It was the light. Every single light in that house was always on. Kitchen light, porch light, upstairs bedroom light, basement window glowing yellow from below the ground. Even the tiny window in the downstairs bathroom had this pale square of brightness behind the frosted glass. At first, I thought he had forgotten to turn them off. Then I noticed it happened every night. I asked my mom about it after our 3rd night there. She was washing dishes, still in her work clothes, looking exhausted. "Maybe he's scared of the dark," she said. She said it casually, like it was nothing. And honestly, that made sense. He was old. He lived alone. Maybe the lights made him feel less lonely. Still, something about it bothered me. When I went to bed, my window faced the side of his house. I could see his kitchen through a gap in the trees. Every night, around 11:30, he would stand there perfectly still, holding a mug in both hands. He never drank from it. He just looked toward the wall. Not out the window. Not at me. At the wall inside his own house. I told myself I was being dramatic. New place, new noises, overactive imagination. But then I noticed the closets. One night, I was taking out the trash when Mr. Corman's front door opened. He stepped onto the porch wearing brown slippers and a cardigan, even though it was humid outside. "Evening," he called. His voice was soft and dry. "Hi," I said. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I glanced past him before he closed the door. The hallway behind him was bright enough to hurt my eyes. Every door inside was open. Every room lit. And at the far end of the hall, I saw a closet. The light inside it was on too. For some reason, that detail stayed with me. A week later, I was walking home from school when I saw Mr. Corman in his yard. He was standing beside the basement window, staring down at it. The glass was covered from the inside with thick yellow curtains, but light glowed around the edges. I said hello. He didn't answer. Then, from inside the basement, something tapped the glass. 3 soft taps. Mr. Corman flinched so hard his shoulders jerked. He turned around and saw me. For 1 second, his face changed. It wasn't angry. It was afraid. Then he forced a smile. "Old pipes," he said. I hadn't asked anything. That night, I told my mom. She sighed and rubbed her forehead. "Honey, please don't start making stories about the neighbors. We just got here." So I stopped bringing it up, but I kept watching. It became a habit. Every night before bed, I'd look out my window and count the lights. Front room, kitchen, upstairs, basement, hallway, bathroom, always all of them. Then in October, the power went out. It happened during a storm. Not a huge storm, just heavy rain and wind strong enough to make the trees bend. I was in my room doing homework when everything shut off at once. My lamp died. The Wi-Fi cut. The heater clicked silent. My mom yelled from downstairs, "You okay?" "Yeah," I called back. Our whole street went dark. I went to the window because that's what people do during outages. You look outside, like staring at the darkness will somehow fix it. Every house on Palmer Street was black, except Mr. Corman's. His house was glowing. Not just one emergency lamp. Not candles. Every window burned with the same steady yellow light as always. I remember standing there, my hand still on the curtain, feeling my stomach tighten. Then I saw the silhouettes. At first, I thought it was one person walking across his living room. Then another appeared. Then another. They stood behind the curtains. Thin shapes. Human shapes. Too many of them. They didn't move like people walking around a house. They stood shoulder to shoulder, facing outward, perfectly still. My mouth went dry. There were at least 12. Maybe more. I ran downstairs. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Look at Mr. Corman's house." She came to the window with a flashlight in her hand. The second she saw it, her expression changed. "What the hell?" That was the first time I saw her afraid of that street. We called the electric company first, then the non-emergency police line. My mom tried to explain that our neighbor's house still had power while the whole street was out, and that there were people inside. The dispatcher told her officers were already dealing with storm calls, but someone would come by when they could. I couldn't stop watching. The silhouette stayed there for nearly 20 minutes. Then, one by one, the lights inside Mr. Corman's house began to flicker. Not off, just flicker. Every time they dimmed, the silhouettes shifted closer to the windows. Every time the lights brightened, they froze. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from somewhere outside made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. Because the sound wasn't coming from his house. It was coming from between our houses. A dragging, careful sound, like someone moving through wet leaves. My mom grabbed my wrist and pulled me away from the window. "Upstairs," she whispered. We locked ourselves in my room, which sounds stupid now, because upstairs wasn't safer. But fear doesn't make you strategic. It makes you small. From my bedroom, we heard Mr. Corman screaming. Not yelling words, just screaming. Then every light in his house went out. The whole street became black. For maybe 3 seconds, there was nothing. Then something hit our side door. My mom covered my mouth with her hand before I could make a sound. Another hit, then scratching. Not frantic, not animal. Slow. Testing. The police arrived 9 minutes later. I know because I watched the time on my phone over and over, while my hands shook so badly I nearly dropped it. When the blue lights washed across the street, the scratching stopped. Officers checked our yard first, then went to Mr. Corman's house. The front door was wide open. He was found in the hallway, alive but barely able to speak. He kept saying the same thing. "I kept them bright. I kept them bright." They found the hidden spaces 2 days later. False walls, narrow crawl spaces, openings behind closets, a tunnel-like section between the basement and the foundation. The official explanation was that Mr. Corman had been hiding people in his house for years. But that didn't explain everything. It didn't explain why some spaces had locks on the inside. It didn't explain the scratch marks behind the walls. It didn't explain why the police report listed multiple unidentified individuals believed to have fled the property, even though no one on our street saw anyone leave. Mr. Corman died before trial. My mom and I moved out before Thanksgiving. People ask me sometimes if I think he was evil or scared. I honestly don't know, but I still sleep with a lamp on. Not because I'm afraid of the dark, because I saw what moved when the lights went out. Story 2. I moved into the blue house on Marlowe Lane when I was 24, right after I got my first real job. It wasn't a fancy place. The floors leaned slightly near the kitchen. The bathroom sink made a clicking sound when the water ran, and the backyard was mostly dirt with patches of stubborn grass. But it was mine, or at least rented by me, and after years of roommates, that felt like freedom. My name is Ethan. Back then I worked as an assistant manager at a shipping warehouse outside Dayton. My life was boring in the best way. Work, groceries, laundry, late-night frozen pizza, video games on weekends. The neighbor on my left was Mrs. Alder. She was probably in her late 60s, maybe older. Small woman, silver hair, always dressed like she was expecting guests. Cardigans, long skirts, pearl earrings. Her house smelled like lavender and old paper, even from the porch. The first time she knocked, I had only been living there 4 days. She held up 3 envelopes. "I believe these are yours," she said. I apologized and took them. Electric bill, bank statement, and some welcome coupon from an internet company. Mailman must be confused, I said. Mrs. Alder smiled. They always are with that house. I remember thinking that was a strange thing to say. Not with this street. With that house. The mail mix-up kept happening. Once a week, sometimes twice, Mrs. Alder would appear at my door holding envelopes addressed to me. At first, it was normal stuff. Bills, insurance forms, a letter from my old college about alumni donations. She always handed them over politely, but she never left right away. She would stand there, smiling, looking past me into the hallway. "You live alone?" she asked once. "Yeah," I said. "Brave," she replied. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She didn't laugh with me. About a month later, the strange letters started. The first one looked ordinary. White envelope. My full name typed on the front. No return address. The stamp wasn't canceled properly, just smeared across the corner like someone had pressed it with a dirty thumb. Mrs. Alder brought it over on a Tuesday evening. "I think I got one of yours again." I thanked her and opened it after she left. Inside was one sheet of paper. It said, "Ethan, do not answer the basement door after midnight." That was all. I stood in my kitchen reading it 3 times, feeling stupid for getting scared. My house didn't even have a basement door inside. Just an old cellar entrance outside, locked with a rusted padlock. I told myself it was a prank. The next letter came 5 days later. Again, Mrs. Alder delivered it. This one said, "You will hear scratching under the kitchen floor. Do not look for it." I didn't sleep much that night. 2 nights later, around 1 a.m., I woke to a faint scratching sound. It came from below the kitchen. Slow, patient, like fingernails dragging across wood. My heart sank into my stomach as the house settled around me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. I called my friend Mark, who told me it was probably a raccoon. "Old houses make noises," he said. "You're freaking yourself out." Maybe he was right. But the next morning, I checked the cellar entrance. The padlock was hanging open. I bought a new lock that afternoon. For a while, nothing happened. Then Mrs. Alder brought the 3rd letter. This one was different. The envelope looked old, yellowed at the edges, but the paper inside was clean. The date typed at the top was 1 year in the future. My hands went cold. The letter said, "Missing person report, Ethan Cole. Last seen Friday, October 17th, entering neighboring residence at 9:14 p.m. I read it until the words stopped making sense. That Friday was 6 days away. I went to Mrs. Alder's house immediately. She opened the door before I even knocked, like she had been waiting. "Something wrong?" she asked. I held up the letter. "Where did you get this?" Her eyes moved from my face to the envelope and back. "It was in my mailbox." "Who is sending these?" She smiled faintly. "People send all kinds of things, dear." I looked past her into the house. Behind her, the hallway was dim and narrow, lined with framed photos. Not family photos. Portraits of strangers. Men, women, a teenage boy, an older couple. All posed stiffly. All standing in front of my blue house. I stepped back. Mrs. Alder noticed me looking. "Previous neighbors," she said. Her voice was still polite, but something in her smile had sharpened. That night, I searched online for my address. Old rental listings came up. Property records. Nothing strange. Then I searched missing persons with the street name. That's when I found the first article. A woman named Paige Lowell vanished from Marlowe Lane 9 years earlier. She had lived in my house. Then a man named Andrew Kessler, 5 years before that. Then a retired teacher, Helen Moore. All of them had lived at my address. All of them disappeared without a clear reason. I didn't sleep at all. The next day, I went to the police. I brought the letters. The officer at the desk listened, but I could tell what he thought. Young guy, living alone, receiving creepy mail, probably making too much of it. He said they'd make a note. On Friday, I left work early and drove to Mark's apartment. I wasn't going to be anywhere near Marlowe Lane at 9:14 p.m. At 8:30, my phone rang. It was Mrs. Alder. I don't know how she got my number. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call. Then another. Finally, a text appeared. "I think I got one of yours again." I turned my phone off. Mark tried to keep things light. We watched a movie, ordered food, joked around. At 9:14, I was sitting on his couch, staring at the clock, waiting to feel stupid. Nothing happened. At 10:30, I drove home. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. Mrs. Alder's porch light was on. There was an envelope taped to my front door. My name was written by hand this time. Inside was a single sentence. "You were supposed to come inside." I heard movement behind me. Mrs. Alder stood at the edge of my yard, wearing a dark coat. "Ethan," she called softly, "you shouldn't ignore mail addressed to you." I didn't answer. I got into my car and locked the doors. She walked closer, slow and calm. "You don't understand," she said through the window. "It comes whether I open it or not." I started the engine. She placed both hands on the glass. Her face changed then. The sweet old neighbor mask fell away, and underneath was something hollow and furious. "They all came in eventually," she whispered. I reversed so fast I nearly hit a mailbox. The police took me more seriously after that, because my doorbell camera had caught her waiting in my yard for 40 minutes. When they searched her house, they found boxes of mail in the basement. Not just mine, dozens of people's names, old letters, medical documents, bank cards, photographs, copies of missing person flyers. And behind a locked storage wall, they found a room set up like an office, with files for every person who had lived in my house, including me. Mrs. Alder was arrested, but the police never explained the dates on the letters. They said she probably forged them. Maybe she did. But after I moved out, one final envelope arrived at my new apartment. No return address. Inside was a photo of my old blue house. On the back, written in neat handwriting, were 6 words. "She is not done collecting mail." Story 3. When my parents first asked me to watch my little brother overnight, I was actually excited. I was 16, and it felt like proof they trusted me. They were going to a wedding 2 hours away, staying in a hotel for the night, and I would be alone with Noah until morning. Noah was 3. He was sweet, loud, sticky, and obsessed with dinosaurs. I loved him, but he could turn one bedtime into a hostage situation. We lived in a duplex in a quiet neighborhood outside Pittsburgh. Our side was 14B. The neighbor's side was 14A. Same building, mirrored layout, thin walls. The man next door was named Mr. Keene. I didn't know much about him except that he lived alone and worked odd hours. He had a pale, tired face, always wore gray sweaters, and never looked directly at people for more than a second. My mom said he was harmless. That night started normal. I made Noah mac and cheese, let him watch one extra cartoon, then fought the usual bedtime war. By 9:15, he was asleep in his room, surrounded by stuffed dinosaurs. My parents had left the baby monitor on the kitchen counter. It was one of those older audio-only ones. White plastic, little green light, volume dial on the side. We didn't use it much anymore, but Mom told me to keep it nearby. "Just in case he wakes up," she said. For the first hour, all I heard was Noah breathing and occasionally mumbling in his sleep. Then around 10:40, the monitor crackled. A man coughed. I froze. It wasn't Noah. It wasn't even coming from his room. The sound was deeper, closer, like someone standing right beside the microphone. I turned the volume down. For a second, there was only static. Then footsteps. Slow steps across a floor. I grabbed my phone and texted Mom. "Baby monitor is picking up weird sounds." She replied a few minutes later. "Probably next door. Those things catch signals sometimes. Don't scare yourself." I tried to accept that. Then I heard water running, cabinet doors opening, a chair scraping, normal house sounds, except they were coming from the baby monitor, from the neighbor's house. I got up and checked Noah. He was still asleep. His room was dark, quiet, peaceful. The monitor transmitter sat on his dresser. The little red power light was on. Nothing unusual. Back in the kitchen, the monitor crackled again. This time, I heard whispering, not clear words at first, just a soft murmur. Then my own name, Lena. My entire body went cold. I stared at the monitor like it had become something alive. Again, from the speaker, softer this time. Lena. I unplugged it. The sound stopped. For about 5 seconds, I stood there breathing hard, telling myself signals crossed, voices distorted, coincidence. Then the unplugged monitor whispered, "Don't turn around." I screamed and dropped it. Noah woke up crying. That saved me, I think, because I ran to his room without looking back. I scooped him up, locked his bedroom door, and called my parents. My dad answered, annoyed at first, then alarmed when he heard me crying. "Lena, slow down. What happened?" "The monitor," I whispered. "Someone said my name. He told me to call 911 if I felt unsafe, then said they were leaving the wedding right away. But they were still 2 hours away." I called the police. The dispatcher stayed on the phone with me while I sat on Noah's bed, holding him against my chest. He kept asking why I was scared. I told him I wasn't. That was a lie. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling, as I fumbled with the lock on the bedroom window, checking it twice. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. Then I heard tapping. Not on the window, on the wall. 3 taps. From the side we shared with Mr. Keene. Noah stopped crying. He looked at the wall and whispered, "Dinosaur?" I put my hand over his mouth gently. The tapping came again, then a voice through the wall. "Lena." Not through the monitor now, through the wall itself. The police arrived 12 minutes later. When I saw the red and blue lights outside, I almost sobbed from relief. I carried Noah downstairs and opened the door before they even knocked. 2 officers checked our side of the duplex. Nothing. Then they went next door. Mr. Keene answered wearing the same gray sweater, blinking like he had just woken up. The officers asked if he had been using a baby monitor. He said no. They asked if anyone else was inside. He said no. I watched from our porch as one officer stepped inside while the other stayed near the door. A minute passed. Then 2. Then I heard the officer inside shout. Mr. Keene ran. He didn't run out the front door. He bolted toward the back of his house. The second officer chased him. I stood there holding Noah, shaking so badly I could barely keep him in my arms. Later, my parents told me what police found. There was a hidden opening behind a bookcase in Mr. Keene's hallway. It led into a narrow, unfinished space between the 2 units. Not a normal crawl space. Someone had widened it, insulated parts of it, and put down boards so they could move quietly. There were wires, small microphones, a sleeping bag, empty bottles, snack wrappers, a notebook filled with times. Our times. When my mom left for work, when my dad came home, when Noah napped, when I got home from school. There were also notes about the family who had lived in our unit before us. Police said Mr. Keene had been using the space for months, maybe longer. They found a baby monitor receiver in there, along with a transmitter that had been placed near a vent behind Noah's dresser. That was how he spoke through it. That was how he listened. I asked my dad later why Mr. Keene had warned me not to turn around. He didn't answer for a while. Then he said police found fresh marks on the kitchen floor behind where I had been standing. The basement door had been unlocked from the inside. I still think about that. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the sound of his voice saying my name. The calm, empty way he said it, like he had practiced. We moved out before the end of the month. Noah doesn't remember much. He remembers the police lights and me crying, but not the voice. I remember everything. And to this day, I can't stand static. Not on radios, not on speakers, not on baby monitors in other people's houses. Because sometimes when a signal cuts in and out, I swear I hear breathing underneath it. And for 1 second, I'm 16 again, holding my little brother in the dark, listening to someone inside the wall whisper my name. Story 4. Every Saturday night at exactly 12:03, Mr. Haskell mowed his lawn. Not midnight, not 12:05, 12:03. I know because the first time it woke me up, I checked my phone in disbelief. I was 15 then, living with my parents on a quiet street in a small Indiana town where nothing interesting happened unless someone's dog got loose or a storm knocked over a tree. Our neighbor, Mr. Haskell, lived 2 houses down. He was a big man in his 50s with a square head, thick arms, and a permanent sunburn across his neck. He didn't talk much. He waved if adults waved first, ignored kids, and spent most evenings sitting in his garage with the door halfway open. His lawn was perfect. Too perfect. Dark green, flat, trimmed so evenly it looked fake. No weeds. No brown patches. No flowers. Just grass. The first Saturday, the mower woke me from a dead sleep. It was loud enough to rattle my window. I sat up, confused, thinking maybe I'd dreamed it. Then I heard it again. That low, choking engine sound moving back and forth. I looked outside. Mr. Haskell was pushing his mower under the streetlights. He wore jeans, work boots, and a white undershirt. His face was blank. The weirdest part was that he wasn't mowing the whole yard. Just one patch near the back fence. Back and forth. Back and forth. Same rectangle of grass. The next morning, I brought it up at breakfast. My mom frowned. At midnight? 12:03, I said. My dad laughed. You checked the exact time? It was loud. Mom looked at Dad. I didn't hear anything. Neither had he. I thought that was impossible. Our houses weren't that far apart. The next Saturday it happened again. 12:03. This time I was ready. I sat by my window with my phone camera open. The mower started right on time. I recorded through the blinds, zooming in as much as I could. On video, Mr. Haskell moved in complete silence. No mower sound. No engine. No birds, no wind, nothing. But in my room, I could hear it roaring. That scared me more than I wanted to admit. I showed the video to my best friend, Caleb, on Monday. He watched it twice and said, "Dude, that's creepy." Right? But there's no sound. I know, but I heard it. Caleb made a face. You sure you weren't half asleep? That became the problem. Every time I told someone, it sounded stupid. A neighbor mowing at midnight. No one else hearing it. Silent video. Same patch of grass. It sounded like a dream. So I stopped telling people. But I kept watching. On the 4th Saturday, I noticed something else. Mr. Haskell wasn't cutting the grass shorter. The patch looked taller every week. Not by much. Just enough. Like something underneath was pushing it up. That night, as he passed over the same spot again and again, the mower headlights caught something pale in the grass. At first, I thought it was a root. Then the mower moved past it, and I saw fingers. A hand. I stumbled backwards so fast I hit my dresser. My heart was hammering. My mouth tasted like metal. I looked again. The hand was gone. Mr. Haskell stopped mowing. Slowly, he turned his head toward my window. I dropped to the floor. I don't know if he saw me. I stayed there for nearly 20 minutes, barely breathing. The next day, I walked by his house on purpose. The yard looked normal. Perfect, actually. The patch near the fence was smooth and green. Mr. Haskell stood in his driveway washing his truck. "Morning," he said. He had never spoken to me before. I froze. "Morning," I said. He sprayed the hose across the windshield, not looking at me. "You sleep okay last night?" My stomach tightened. "Yeah." He smiled. "Good. Some boys let their imagination run too much." I walked home faster than I meant to. That evening, I told my dad again, but this time I told him about the hand. His expression changed from amused to annoyed. "Don't say things like that unless you're sure." "I am sure." "Did you actually see a body?" "No, but..." "Then leave it alone." So I did something stupid. The next Saturday, I waited until my parents were asleep, then climbed out my bedroom window. I wasn't planning to go into his yard. I only wanted to get closer, record from behind the hedges, prove I wasn't losing it. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. At 12:03, the mower started. The sound hit me in the chest. Mr. Haskell came out of his garage, pushing it toward the backyard. I crouched behind the hedge separating his yard from the sidewalk. He mowed the same patch, back and forth, back and forth. Then the grass split. That's the only way I can describe it. The ground didn't open like in a movie. It just shifted, bulged. Something pale pressed upward through the soil and grass. Mr. Haskell leaned harder on the mower, forcing it over the spot. He was whispering. I couldn't hear the words over the engine, but his face was twisted with panic. Then the mower jammed. The engine screamed. A hand pushed through the grass. Then part of an arm. I gasped. Mr. Haskell's head snapped toward me. I ran. I didn't make it far. He caught me near the sidewalk and grabbed my shirt so hard the collar dug into my throat. "You didn't see anything," he hissed. I couldn't speak. His breath smelled like coffee and dirt. "You think I want to do this?" he whispered. "You think I sleep?" Behind him, something rustled in the yard. His face went white. He let go of me and ran back. I sprinted home, climbed through my window, and called 911 from under my bed. When police arrived, Mr. Haskell was in his backyard, sitting beside the mower, crying. They dug up the patch near the fence. What they found was not something I want to describe in detail. It was enough to close off the street for 2 days and bring detectives from the county. The official story was that Mr. Haskell had buried evidence of a crime years earlier. But I heard what he kept saying when they put him in the patrol car. "It grows back." Over and over. "It grows back if I stop." I'm older now. My parents moved away after I graduated. Mr. Haskell went to prison, and the house eventually sold to a young couple who painted it yellow and planted roses. I drove by once years later. The lawn was still perfect, except near the back fence. There was one patch of grass that looked just a little taller than the rest. I didn't stop. I don't think I ever will. Story 5. I used to watch the Millers eat dinner. I know how that sounds. I was 17, lonely, and embarrassed by my own life. My parents were going through a divorce that turned our house into a battlefield of slammed doors, whispered phone calls, and cold leftovers eaten separately in different rooms. Across the street, the Millers looked perfect. They moved in during the summer before senior year. Father, mother, teenage daughter, little boy. Their house had white shutters, hanging flower baskets, and warm lights glowing in every window. Every evening at 7:30, they ate dinner together in the dining room. I could see them from my bedroom window. I didn't spy at first. Not exactly. I just noticed them. The father would pull out the mother's chair. The daughter would roll her eyes at something, then smile. The little boy would swing his legs under the table. They passed bowls, laughed, talked. It looked like a commercial for a life I didn't have. My name is Rachel. At that time, I was quiet in the way people mistake for rude. I had friends at school, but not close ones. I spent most nights in my room with headphones on, trying not to hear my parents destroy each other downstairs. So yes, I watched. Not in a creepy way, at least that's what I told myself. The Millers gave me comfort. Then I noticed the first repetition. It was a Wednesday. The father said something, lifted his fork, and everyone laughed. The next night, the exact same thing happened. Same timing, same gestures, same laugh. I remember sitting up straighter. Maybe it was coincidence. Families repeat jokes. People have routines. But the next night, I watched carefully. At 7:32, the mother touched her necklace. At 7:35, the daughter looked down at her plate, then toward the window. At 7:41, the little boy spilled his water. At 8:12, the father stood and walked to the window. Every night. Exactly. At first, I thought maybe I was remembering wrong. So I wrote it down. I made notes in the back of an old notebook. 7:30 dinner begins. 7:32 mother touches necklace. 7:35 daughter looks at window. 7:41 boy spills water. 8:12 father stands at window. The pattern never changed. Even when it rained. Even when Halloween decorations went up. Even when my mother threw a glass in our kitchen and I cried into my pillow. Across the street the perfect family smiled under warm lights, repeating the same perfect night. One evening the daughter saw me. I had never seen her outside. Not once. No school bus. No walks. No groceries. None of them ever seemed to leave, except the father, who drove away every morning at 8 o'clock and returned at 6:15. The daughter was probably my age. Brown hair, pale face, always wearing the same blue sweater at dinner. That night, at 7:35, she looked toward my window like usual. But this time, her eyes locked onto mine. I froze. She didn't smile. She mouthed 2 words. "Help us." I stepped back from the window so fast my chair scraped the floor. For a few seconds, I just stood there with my hand over my mouth. Then I looked again. The father was standing behind her. Not at 8:12. At 7:36. His hand rested on her shoulder. He stared straight across the street at my window. I shut my curtains. My first instinct was to tell my mom, but she was in the living room crying on the phone to my aunt. My dad wasn't home, so I texted my friend Nina. "The family across from me is acting weird." She replied, "Weird how?" I typed and deleted 3 different answers because all of them sounded insane. They repeat dinner every night, and the daughter asked for help through the window. Nina sent, "Girl, call the police then." So I did. Not 911, the non-emergency line. I said I was worried about the family across the street. I said I thought someone might be controlling them or keeping them inside. The officer asked if I had seen violence. I said no. He asked if anyone had asked me directly for help. I paused. "She mouthed it," I said. There was a silence. They said they'd send someone for a welfare check. A patrol car came 40 minutes later. I watched from behind my curtain as 2 officers knocked on the Miller's door. The father answered. He smiled, shook their hands, let them inside. They came out 7 minutes later. One officer actually laughed at something the father said before leaving. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. At 7:30 the next night, dinner began like always. But the daughter's chair was empty. The family still performed the routine. The mother touched her necklace. The little boy spilled his water. The father laughed. At 8:12, he stood and walked to the window. He held up a sheet of paper. It had one sentence written in thick black marker. "Mind your own family." My heart sank into my stomach as the curtains shifted behind him, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I heard a tapping sound. I thought it was my window. It wasn't. It was coming from downstairs. I crept out of my room and stood at the top of the stairs. The tapping came again. From the front door. 3 soft knocks. Then a whisper. "Rachel." I backed away. My phone was in my room. My parents were both gone. My mom had driven to my aunt's after another fight, and my dad was staying at a hotel. The whisper came again. "Rachel, please." It sounded like the Miller girl. I ran to the door but stopped before opening it. Something felt wrong. I looked through the peephole. She stood on the porch in her blue sweater, face pale, eyes wide. Behind her, near the sidewalk, stood the father, half hidden by the dark. He wasn't touching her. He didn't need to. The girl's mouth trembled. "Open the door," she whispered. The father smiled. I stepped back and called 911. This time, I didn't care how crazy I sounded. The father saw the movement through the window beside the door. His smile disappeared. He grabbed the girl by the arm and pulled her away. When police arrived, the Miller house was dark for the first time since they moved in. The family was gone, but they hadn't moved out. Inside, police found the dining room table set with plastic food glued to the plates. Tape marks on the floor showed where each chair had to sit. A camera was mounted inside a decorative clock facing the table. In the basement, they found scripts, pages and pages of dinner conversation. Laugh here. Touch necklace. Look at window. Spill water. The mother and children were found 2 states away 3 days later after a traffic stop. The man calling himself Mr. Miller wasn't the children's father. The woman wasn't his wife. He had been forcing them to act like a perfect family for months, moving from town to town whenever someone noticed. The daughter told police she mouthed, "Help us," because I was the only person who watched long enough to see the pattern. That sentence still haunts me. The only person who watched long enough. People think danger looks chaotic. Broken windows, screaming blood, panic. But sometimes it looks warm. A bright dining room, a smiling family, a father pulling out a chair. Sometimes the performance is the warning. Years later, I still hate houses where all the windows glow at night. I hate seeing families eat dinner in perfect silence. I hate when someone smiles too long without blinking. And whenever something looks too perfect, I don't envy it anymore. I look closer. Story 6. The first time I heard the footsteps, I thought it was just an old building settling. That's what people always say when they don't want to admit something scares them. Pipes knock. Floors creak. Wood expands when the weather changes. A loose vent can sound like someone breathing if you're tired enough. I told myself all of that because the alternative was accepting that someone was walking above me every night in an apartment that was supposed to be empty. My name is Elena. I was 21 when this happened, in my second year of college, living in a cheap apartment on the east side of Columbus. It was the kind of place students rented when they were too broke for campus housing, but too stubborn to move back home. The hallways always smelled like old carpet and somebody's dinner. The lobby light flickered. The laundry machines ate quarters, but the rent was low, and for the first time in my life, I had my own place. The apartment itself wasn't bad. One bedroom, tiny kitchen, cracked bathroom mirror, and a living room window that looked out at the parking lot. I lived on the second floor. Above me was the third floor, which the landlord told me was closed off because of fire damage from years earlier. Nothing to worry about, he said when I signed the lease. Nobody lives above you. At the time, that sounded perfect. The first week was quiet. I went to classes, worked evenings at a bookstore, came home around 10, microwaved something sad, and fell asleep with YouTube playing on my laptop. I liked the routine. I liked knowing my door was locked and nobody could bother me. Then one Tuesday night, around 1:13 a.m., I heard it. Thud. Then a pause. Thud. Then a slow scrape. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. At first, I thought I'd dreamed it. Then it came again, directly above my bedroom. Heavy, slow footsteps, like someone dragging one foot behind the other. Thud. Scrape. Thud. Scrape. I sat up, heart beating harder than it should have. The sound moved from above my bedroom toward the living room, then stopped. I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, I called the landlord. He sounded annoyed before I even finished explaining. "Nobody's upstairs," he said. "I know you said that, but I heard someone walking. It's an old building, Elena. Heat kicks on, wood moves. It sounded like footsteps." He sighed. "Everyone thinks sounds are footsteps at first." I wanted to argue, but I also didn't want to seem dramatic. So I let it go. That night, it happened again. Same time. A little after 1 a.m. Thud. Scrape. Thud. This time I was awake when it started. I had been studying at my kitchen table, highlighter in one hand, coffee gone cold beside me. The sound began right above my head. I froze. The street looked ordinary through the window, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face, or sometimes no face at all. Sometimes it's just a sound in the ceiling. I grabbed a broom and hit the ceiling twice. "Hello," I shouted. The footsteps stopped. For maybe 10 seconds, there was nothing. Then one soft knock answered from above. Not a pipe, not wood, a knock. I left my apartment and slept at my friend Kayla's dorm that night. She laughed at first, but when she saw I was shaking, she stopped. The landlord finally agreed to check the upstairs unit after I called him 3 more times and threatened to report a possible intruder. He came 2 days later with a ring of keys and a flashlight. I followed him up the stairwell, even though every part of me wanted to stay downstairs. The third floor hallway smelled dry and burnt, like old smoke trapped inside the walls. Plastic sheets covered some of the windows. There were 3 apartment doors. Mine was directly under 3B. He unlocked it. The apartment was empty. Not just empty like nobody lived there. Empty like nobody had been there in years. Dust coated the floor. The walls were stained. Some of the ceiling panels were missing. There were no footprints, no mattress, no food wrappers, no signs of anyone hiding. "See," he said. "Nothing." I almost apologized. Almost. Then I noticed something near the back wall. A square panel in the floor, half hidden under dust. "What's that?" The landlord's expression changed for 1 second. It was small, but I saw it. He looked at the panel, then quickly looked away. "Maintenance access," he said. "Don't worry about it." He rushed me out after that. For 2 nights, nothing happened. I started to feel embarrassed. Maybe it really had been the building. Maybe I'd scared myself into hearing things. Then Friday night came. I got home late from work, exhausted and still smelling like paperbacks and coffee from the bookstore. I locked my door, changed into sweats, and brushed my teeth. I was climbing into bed when I heard the creak. But it wasn't above me. It was inside the ceiling. Not on top of it, not from another apartment. Inside it, a long, slow groan of wood directly over my bed. I didn't move. Dust drifted from the corner where the ceiling met the wall. Then came the footsteps again, closer than ever. Thud, scrape, thud. The sound moved across my bedroom ceiling, then stopped above the closet. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. Something tapped once from inside the ceiling. Then the closet door shifted. Just a little. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and called 911. The dispatcher asked me what was happening, and I whispered, "Someone is in my ceiling." The words sounded insane. But then the ceiling vent above my closet moved. One screw fell out and hit the carpet. I ran. I didn't even put shoes on. I grabbed my keys, tore open the door, and sprinted down the hallway. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling, as I fumbled with the building's front door. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. Outside, I stood barefoot on the cold pavement until the police came. They searched my apartment first, then the 3rd floor, then the crawl space between floors. That's where they found it. Blankets, a flashlight, empty water bottles, a small notebook, a folding knife, and photos. Photos of tenants, women carrying groceries, students walking to cars, people standing in their kitchens, taken through tiny gaps near vents and ceiling panels. There were photos of me too. Me asleep on my couch, me brushing my hair in the bathroom, me standing in my bedroom, looking up at the ceiling. The police never found the person who had been living in the crawl space. They found several access points hidden behind maintenance panels throughout the building. Whoever it was had been moving between units for weeks, maybe months. The landlord claimed he had no idea. Maybe he didn't, but I still remember how he looked at that floor panel. I moved out the next day. It's been 3 years, and I still can't sleep in rooms with ceiling vents. I tape over them in hotel rooms. I check closets twice. I listen when buildings creak. Because sometimes an empty apartment isn't empty. Sometimes the thing you're afraid of isn't above you. Sometimes it's already inside the walls. Story 7. I used to think being polite was the same as being safe. That sounds stupid now, but when you grow up in a quiet neighborhood, you're taught to smile, say hello, hold doors open, help people carry things. Especially older people. Especially neighbors. You don't want to seem rude. You don't want to be the person everyone whispers about. That was exactly what she counted on. My name is Marcus. I was 28, living alone in a small rented house in a suburb outside Tampa. I worked remotely doing customer support for a software company, which meant most days I barely left the house except to get groceries or take out the trash. My neighborhood was calm in that artificial suburban way. Trim lawns, porch lights, sprinklers ticking at night, dogs barking behind fences. My next-door neighbor was named Mrs. Larkin. At least, that's what she told me. She was probably in her late 50s, maybe early 60s. Short gray hair, soft voice, always wearing cardigans even when it was hot. She introduced herself the day after I moved in by bringing over banana bread wrapped in foil. "I like to know who's living beside me," she said with a smile. She seemed harmless. The first thing she borrowed was sugar. It was 8:30 on a Wednesday night. I was washing dishes when she knocked. I opened the door, and there she was holding a little ceramic bowl. "I hate to bother you, sweetheart," she said. "I'm baking and just realized I'm out of sugar." I gave her some. She thanked me like I had saved her life. The next morning, the bowl was on my porch, washed, dried, and wrapped in a folded paper towel with a little note. "Thank you, Marcus." I remember thinking it was sweet. After that, she borrowed small things every few days. Tape, scissors, batteries, a phone charger, once a flashlight. She always returned them the next day, cleaned and wrapped neatly, sometimes with a cookie or a note. At first, I liked it. It made the neighborhood feel friendly. Then I started noticing things. The scissors came back with a strand of dark hair caught in the hinge. Not mine. I had short hair. This was long, almost black, wrapped tight in the metal. The tape came back smelling like damp concrete, that cold basement smell. The flashlight had dirt packed around the button. The phone charger came back with brown streaks on the cord. Mud, I thought. I hoped. I told myself she was just messy. Maybe she did crafts. Maybe she gardened. Maybe the hair came from a wig or a pet. I kept explaining things away because the alternative felt ridiculous. Then one night, around 11:45, she knocked again. I wasn't expecting anyone. The knock was soft but steady. When I opened the door, Mrs. Larkin stood there smiling, except her smile looked strained. "Marcus," she said, "do you have a shovel?" I stared at her. "A shovel?" "Yes. I'm so sorry. My garden bed collapsed near the fence, and I don't want the rain to make it worse." It wasn't raining. The air outside was dry and still. I looked past her toward her house. All the lights were off except one in the garage. "I don't think I have one," I lied. Her smile faded just enough for me to notice. "Oh," she said. "Are you sure?" "Yeah. Sorry." She didn't move right away. She stood there looking into my house, not at me, but past me, like she was checking whether anyone else was inside. "Do you live alone, Marcus?" The question hit me wrong. I forced a laugh. "No, my brother's here tonight." Her eyes shifted back to mine. "Really?" "Yeah, he's asleep." For the first time since I'd met her, she didn't look friendly. She looked annoyed. "Well," she said quietly, "good night." I locked the door and stood there listening as her footsteps crossed my porch. The next morning, I found my old phone charger on the mat. I hadn't lent it to her that week. It was wrapped in paper towel like always. Inside the paper towel was a key. Not my house key, but close. Same brand, same silver shape. Freshly cut. My stomach turned. I called my friend Andre and told him everything. He laughed at first, but when I showed him the key, he got quiet. "Change your locks," he said. "Today." I did. That afternoon, a locksmith came. While he worked, Mrs. Larkin stood in her driveway watering one plant for almost 20 minutes, watching us without pretending not to. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room with the TV on low, every light in the house turned on. Around 1 a.m., my back door handle jiggled. Once, then again. Slowly. I froze. The handle turned halfway, stopped, then rattled harder. I called 911 and whispered my address. The rattling stopped. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring. Then a text came through. "You used to be helpful." My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. I ran to the front window and pulled back the curtain just enough. Mrs. Larkin was standing in my backyard. She wasn't alone. There was a man with her, tall and thin, wearing gloves. He held something in one hand. Not a weapon exactly, but a roll of duct tape. I don't remember thinking. I grabbed my car keys, opened the front door, and bolted outside. I didn't even shut the door behind me. I jumped in my car and locked it as the man came around the side of the house. He didn't run. That scared me more. He walked toward my car like he knew I had nowhere to go. I reversed over the curb, hit my trash cans, and nearly slammed into a mailbox. As I sped away, I saw Mrs. Larkin standing in the street. She was smiling again. Police arrived minutes later, but by then both of them were gone. Her house looked normal from the outside. When officers searched it, they found almost no furniture. Just a mattress, boxes of borrowed items, rolls of plastic sheeting, gloves, fake IDs, and a notebook with names. Mine was there. Beside my name, she had written, "Lives alone, opens door, polite, hesitated at shovel." There were other names too, some crossed out. The police connected her to several break-ins across nearby counties. People who had opened their doors to a friendly neighbor, a stranded woman, someone asking for batteries or tape. Most had only been robbed. One had disappeared months earlier. They never found Mrs. Larkin. The house had been rented under a fake name, paid in cash. I moved 2 weeks later. I don't answer unexpected knocks anymore. I don't care how harmless someone sounds. I don't lend tools. I don't open the door late at night. People like that don't always force their way in. Sometimes they wait for you to invite them close enough. Story 8. The house next door had a for sale sign in the yard before we even finished unpacking. At first, that felt normal. People sell houses all the time. A quiet street, decent schools, not too far from the city. My parents said it was probably overpriced, and my little brother joked that maybe it was haunted because nobody wanted it. We laughed. I wish we hadn't. My name is Hannah. I was 19 when my family moved to a neighborhood outside Raleigh, North Carolina. I had just finished my first year of community college and was living at home to save money. My dad had gotten a better job, my mom wanted a bigger kitchen, and my brother Tyler just wanted a backyard. The house next door was pale yellow with white shutters and a porch swing that never moved, even when the wind was strong. The lawn was always perfect. Too perfect. No weeds, no toys, no trash cans by the curb. Just the for sale sign stuck near the mailbox. The real estate agent's name was printed on it. Clara Wells. Her photo showed a woman in a blue coat, smiling with teeth too white to look real. A week after we moved in, I saw her in person. She pulled up in a black sedan at 3:15 on a Saturday afternoon. I remember the time because I was sitting on our front steps drinking iced coffee, avoiding unpacking boxes. Clara got out wearing the same blue coat from the sign. It was July, hot enough that the pavement shimmered, but she didn't look sweaty. She didn't even look uncomfortable. A young couple arrived a few minutes later. Clara greeted them with that bright smile and led them inside. I didn't think anything of it until 2 hours passed. Then 3. Their car stayed parked by the curb, but nobody came out. At dinner, I mentioned it. "Maybe they're taking measurements," my mom said. "For 3 hours?" My dad shrugged. People are weird when buying houses. By 10 p.m., the car was gone. I never saw the couple leave. After that, I started noticing a pattern. Every few weeks, Clara came with new people. A man in a suit, a pregnant woman and her husband, 2 older sisters, a family with a little girl holding a stuffed rabbit. They all went inside. Sometimes they came out. Sometimes they didn't. And whenever I checked the listing online afterward, the photos seemed different. Small changes at first. A coat on a chair that hadn't been there before. A pair of shoes by the fireplace. A coffee mug on the kitchen counter. Then one night, I saw something that made my skin go cold. I was scrolling the listing at 1 a.m., half bored, half curious. The living room photo loaded slowly. Same beige couch. Same fireplace. Same bright windows. But standing near the staircase was the young couple from that first weekend. They were smiling, not posing like visitors, standing like homeowners. I zoomed in until the image blurred. It was them. Same dress, same watch, same man with the crooked smile. I showed my mom the next morning. She frowned but said maybe they bought the house and the listing hadn't updated. Then why is it still for sale? She didn't answer. The next open house was on a rainy Thursday evening. Clara arrived at 6 p.m. in the blue coat, holding a black umbrella. I watched from my bedroom window as a man walked up to meet her. He looked nervous, carrying a folder against his chest. Before they went in, Clara looked directly at my window. I stepped back. That night, curiosity got the best of me. Around 8:30, I walked outside, pretending to take the trash to the bins. The house next door glowed warmly through the windows. I could hear Clara's voice inside, muffled but cheerful. Then I heard a man shout. Not loud enough for the whole street, but loud enough for me. "Where's the door?" I froze beside our trash cans. A thud followed, then another. Then Clara's voice, calm and clear through the wall. "You'll like it here once you stop fighting." I dropped the trash bag and ran inside. My parents called the non-emergency police line. Officers came, knocked on the door, looked through windows, and found nothing suspicious. Clara wasn't there. No man. No signs of struggle. Just an empty, staged house. One officer told us, gently, that sound travels strangely in rain. I wanted to believe him. Then the listing updated again. The man from that night was in the dining room photo, standing behind the table with one hand resting on a chair, smiling. His folder lay on the table in front of him. I stopped sleeping well after that. A few days later, Tyler came home from school pale and quiet. He said a woman in a blue coat had talked to him at the bus stop. "She said the house likes families," he whispered. "She said it already knows my name." My dad lost it. He called the realty company printed on the sign. They told him no one named Clara Wells worked there. The sign was gone the next morning. But Clara came back anyway. It was just after midnight when our doorbell rang. My dad went downstairs holding a baseball bat. I followed from the hallway, phone in hand, already recording. Clara stood on our porch in her blue coat. Rain poured behind her, but she was completely dry. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said through the glass. "I wanted to ask if Hannah would be interested in a private tour." My dad shouted, "Get off my property." Her smile didn't move. "She's already been looking." I felt sick. Clara's eyes lifted toward me in the hallway shadows. "You know," she said softly, "most people only need to be invited once." The porch light flickered. Then every light in the house next door turned on at the same time. In the windows, people appeared. The young couple, the pregnant woman, the man with the folder, the little girl with the rabbit. Dozens of them standing shoulder to shoulder, all smiling toward our house. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the faces I'd seen through the window. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. By the time police arrived, Clara was gone again. The neighboring house was empty, completely empty. No furniture, no rugs, no staged photos. Just blank rooms and dust. We moved within a month. The house was listed again 6 weeks later in another city. I found it online by accident. Same yellow siding. Same porch swing. Same agent in the blue coat. Different address. Different neighborhood. Still for sale. Story 9. Mrs. Voss only knocked when my parents weren't home. I didn't notice it at first. That's the part that still bothers me. The pattern was there from the beginning, but I was too used to adults being adults. You don't expect the old woman next door to be dangerous. You expect her to smell like lavender soap and ask about school. My name is Ryan. I was 16 when this happened, living in a small town in Pennsylvania where everyone knew everyone, or at least pretended to. Our street was quiet. Ranch houses, maple trees, basketball hoops and driveways. My parents both worked long hours, so I spent a lot of afternoons alone after school. Mrs. Voss lived in the gray house to our left. She was in her 70s, thin, with white hair pinned back and glasses that made her eyes look huge. My mom used to say, "Be nice to her. She doesn't have anybody." So I was nice. The first time she knocked, she needed help carrying groceries from her car. It was harmless. 2 bags of canned soup, cat food, and laundry detergent. She thanked me 3 times and gave me a peppermint from a glass dish by the door. The next week, she needed a jar opened, then help moving a box, then help checking a smoke alarm because she couldn't reach it. Every time my parents were gone. Every time she acted surprised. "Oh, your mother isn't home? Well, I won't keep you long." At first, I liked being useful. She made me feel mature, like I was the reliable kid on the block. But then the requests started feeling strange. One afternoon, she asked me to come inside and listen for a noise in her basement. "It's probably the furnace," she said, smiling. "But my hearing isn't what it used to be." I stood at the top of her basement stairs and listened. The house smelled old, like dust and boiled vegetables. Downstairs, something scraped across the floor. "What was that?" I asked. Mrs. Voss stood behind me, too close. "That's what I need you to check." I looked down into the dark basement. "No, sorry," I said. "I have homework." Her hand touched my shoulder, just lightly, but I jumped. Her smile stayed in place. "Of course, dear." After that, I avoided her. If I saw her outside, I pretended to be on the phone. If she knocked, I stayed quiet, but she always seemed to know when I was home. One evening, my parents went to my aunt's house 2 towns over. I was heating pizza rolls when the doorbell rang. Mrs. Voss stood outside, holding one hand against her chest. "Ryan," she said, breathless. "I need help, just for a minute." "What happened?" "There's a rug in my hallway. I tripped. I need you to help move it before I fall again." I should have said no. I know that now. But she looked so frail, and guilt hit me hard. I put on shoes and followed her. Inside her house, the air felt wrong. Too warm. Too still. The curtains were closed, and the TV played an old game show with the volume low. The rug was in the hallway, rolled halfway up. "Just lift that end," she said. I bent down. That's when I heard it. A low sound from behind the basement door. Not a furnace. A voice. I stood up fast. "Is someone here?" Mrs. Voss's face changed. Only for a second, but long enough. "No," she said. The basement door moved. A soft bump from the other side. Then a whisper. "Help." My body went cold. Mrs. Voss stepped between me and the front door. "You should go," she said, but she didn't move aside. "I'm going to call my dad." Her mouth tightened. "There's no need for that." I backed into the wall, reaching into my pocket for my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Helpful boys are always the easiest." My heart sank into my stomach. The basement door handle started turning. "You shoved pest here." She was stronger than she looked. Her fingers caught my hoodie and pulled, choking me for half a second. I twisted out of it, leaving the hoodie in her hands, and ran for the front door. It was locked. I fumbled with the deadbolt while she came behind me, whispering, "Don't make this ugly, Ryan." I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the lock. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. The basement door opened behind me. I didn't look. I got the front door open and ran barefoot across the lawn, screaming before I even reached my house. I locked myself inside and called 911. While I was on the phone, my house phone rang. Not my cell, the landline in the kitchen. I stared at it. The dispatcher told me not to answer, but the answering machine picked up. Mrs. Voss's voice filled the kitchen, soft and disappointed. "You shouldn't have told me no while you're alone." The police arrived fast. They found Mrs. Voss sitting calmly in her living room. She told them I was confused, that I had panicked because of teenage imagination. Then they checked the basement. There was a man down there, not kidnapped exactly, but trapped. He was a handyman she had hired weeks earlier. She had taken his phone, locked him in, and fed him just enough to keep him alive. The police later said she had been doing things like that for years. Not always in that house. Not always alone. She targeted people who wouldn't be missed right away. Teens, drifters, workers, people who were polite enough to step inside. They found school photos in a drawer. Some were from my high school yearbook. Mine was circled. Mrs. Voss died before trial, which somehow made everything worse. There was no real ending. No explanation that made sense. No courtroom moment. Just a quiet house with boarded windows and a neighborhood that stopped feeling safe overnight. My parents blamed themselves. I blamed myself too, even though everyone told me not to. I'm 24 now. I don't help strangers alone. I don't go inside neighbors' houses. I don't care if that sounds cold, because danger doesn't always look like a man in a dark alley. Sometimes it looks like an old woman with peppermints, waiting for your parents to leave. Story 10. For almost 2 weeks, I thought my neighbor was watching me through my bedroom window. That was the version of the story I could understand. Creepy, yes. Invasive, definitely. But still human. Still something I could explain to my parents, or the police, or myself. The truth was worse because it didn't make sense. My name is Lily. I was 17 at the time, living with my mom in a rented duplex outside Portland. My parents had divorced the year before, and the move was supposed to be our fresh start. New school, new room, new street. My mom worked nights at a hospital, so I spent a lot of evenings alone, doing homework with music playing softly and the curtains half open because I hated feeling boxed in. Across the narrow side yard was the neighbor's house. My bedroom window faced their upstairs window directly, close enough that if both curtains were open, you could see almost everything. For the first few days, the house looked empty. No cars, no porch lights, no movement. Then one night, I noticed the curtain across from mine was slightly open. Just a thin black gap. I was sitting on my bed in pajama shorts, painting my nails, when I felt that weird pressure people talk about. The feeling of being watched. I looked up and saw the gap in the curtain. Nothing moved. No face. Just darkness. I closed my curtain. The next night, it was open again. Same narrow gap. I told myself someone had moved in and didn't realize how close our windows were. Still, I started changing clothes in the bathroom. A few nights later, I saw something pale behind the curtain. A hand, not pressed to the glass, just hanging there, visible through the gap, like someone was standing slightly to the side. I froze. After a minute, I lifted my hand and waved. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to embarrass them. Maybe I wanted proof. The hand waved back, slowly, not friendly, not playful, just copying me. My stomach dropped. I yanked my curtain shut and backed away from the window. When my mom came home the next morning, I told her. She looked tired, still in her scrubs, but she took me seriously enough to walk next door and knock. No one answered. The landlord later told her the place was vacant. Vacant. No one had lived there for months. My mom said maybe a worker had been inside. Maybe a squatter. She called the property manager, and they promised to check. That afternoon, 2 men came and searched the house. I watched them from our kitchen window. They went room to room, turned on lights, opened closets, even checked the garage. They found nothing. For one night, I slept with my curtains closed and my lamp on. Then curiosity got me. Around midnight, I opened the curtain just enough to look. The neighbor's window was empty. No hand, no gap, just glass reflecting moonlight. I should have felt better. Instead, I felt worse, because in the reflection of that window, behind my own shoulder, I saw someone standing in my room. I spun around. Nothing. My room was empty. I checked the closet, under the bed, behind the door. Nothing. My hands shook the whole time. I didn't sleep. I stayed downstairs on the couch until sunrise. The next few days became a blur of checking and rechecking. I avoided mirrors. I kept every curtain closed. I convinced myself stress was messing with me. Divorce, moving, loneliness, my mom gone at night. Maybe my brain was turning shadows into people. Then the notes started. The first one appeared on my desk. A small square of paper, folded once. I thought it was old homework until I opened it. "Don't close the curtain." I screamed so loud my throat hurt. My mom called the police. They searched the house. No signs of forced entry. No fingerprints they could use. No footprints outside. The officer asked if anyone at school might be messing with me. I said no, but I could tell he didn't fully believe me. That night, my mom called out sick and slept in my room while I slept on the couch. Nothing happened. The next night, she had to go back to work. I locked every door and window. I pushed a chair under my bedroom doorknob. I left my phone beside me with 911 ready to call. At 2:06 a.m., my closet door creaked. I sat up so fast my vision blurred. The chair was still under the bedroom door. The window was locked. The closet door opened 1 inch. Then 2. I whispered, "Mom?" No answer. A hand slid out from the darkness. Pale. Thin. fingers too long in the dim light. I couldn't scream at first. My body just stopped working. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of movement from the closet made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text appeared. Wave back. The closet door opened wider. I ran for my bedroom door, kicking the chair away so hard it knocked over. Behind me, something moved fast across the carpet. Not loud, but quick. I yanked the door open and slammed it behind me. Something hit the other side. Once. Hard. I ran outside barefoot and hid in the neighbor's bushes across the street while calling 911. I watched my bedroom window from the dark. The curtain opened by itself. The same hand appeared and waved. Police came. My mom came home crying. Officers searched my room, the closet, the attic, the crawl space, everything. They found no person, but they found something behind my dresser. A narrow gap in the drywall, hidden where the baseboard had been loosened. Behind it was a hollow space between the duplex walls, barely wide enough for someone small to move through. Dust had been disturbed inside. There were scratches in the wood, and tucked into the space were photos. Photos of my room. Photos of me sleeping. Photos taken from angles that shouldn't have been possible. The police believed someone had been hiding in the shared wall cavity between units, possibly entering from the vacant side next door. That explanation made sense for the photos, the notes, maybe even the closet, but it didn't explain the first hand in the window, because the property manager showed us security footage from that day. No one had entered the vacant house. No one had left, and the upstairs room facing mine had no curtains. It never had. We moved the next week. I'm older now, and I live in an apartment with no windows facing anyone else. I keep mirrors covered at night. I check walls for vents and gaps. I know how that sounds, but sometimes when a room is dark and a window turns reflective, I still catch myself looking over my own shoulder. Because I don't think the neighbor's window was ever the problem. I think it only showed me what was already inside.